Good evening, friends. Meeting again with the Organon session and a very happy New Year, Maharashtrian New Year to all of you. A happy Gudi Padwa to all of you. So, dear friends, we are discussing regarding the homeopathic management of chronic diseases since long time. Out of which the first variety, the one-sided diseases, we have started discussing about. The For the sake of understanding it clearly, Hahnemann have divided those one-sided diseases into two parts, the one-sided diseases of the internal variety and external variety. The internal variety and its homeopathic management we have discussed in length, and then we have started discussing about the homeopathic management of the external variety called as local diseases right from aphorism number 185. Again, for the purpose of understanding how to treat local diseases, he has classified it again into two types. The local diseases caused due to the external causes and local diseases caused due to the internal dynamic causes. The first, he has discussed the homeopathic management of local diseases caused due to the external things, and he explained over there in order to tackle all those things, three measures are necessary. First is auxiliary measure, second is surgical, and third one, if there is a dynamic derangement along with that, the homeopathic similarly. And thereafter, he started discussing about the local diseases of internal cause. And this he is explaining in depth because many wrong concepts are there in the allopathic science, where it has been considered these types of local diseases are all caused due to some local cause, and their treatment is aimed at local in allopathy or modern science. But Hahnemann says that it is part and parcel of the whole human being. The vital force itself gets affected, the vital principle itself gets affected, because of which the human being gets disordered and expressed at the periphery as a local disease. Many a times such diseases have generally the symptomatology if it appears at the start. But if you continues to use the allopathic medicine, local medicines, it loses its symptoms. What remains is only sign, and that's why we have to label it by the name of one-sided local diseases. Hahnemann explains, when you treat homeopathically, what is needed is nothing but treating it internally. And in order to treat those diseases internally, what requires is the totality. How to form totality that we have discussed in yesterday's lecture. Whatever may be the present available symptoms are there that you have to take into consideration first. Then you have to ask the detailed ODP, that is origin, duration, and progress. And you have to ask how it has started and what were the symptoms present at that time. If you are able to get the symptoms which were prevalent at the start, where you can get lot of functional symptoms, and then your totality becomes good totality, which is consisted of the present totality plus the previous totality before applying any allopathic medicine. And that on the basis of that total totality, you have to find it out the right simillimum. And that simillimum will act at the center, will act on that human being and not only on his local part. That simillimum will going to take care of that human being. The symptomatology, local symptomatology automatically will going to disappear under the action of the same medicine, because it is prescribed for the whole human being and not only to his parts. And the local disease is an inseparable part of it. That's what Hahnemann have explained, and this is what we have learned. Today we have to start with the 194 aphorism, and where he explains the local treatment should not be used by any means, and that's why he explains all those details over there. Let us start with 194 aphorism. It is not useful either in acute local diseases of recent origin or in local affections that have already existed long time to rub in or apply externally to the spot an external remedy, even though it be the specific and when used internally, salutary by reasons of its homeopathicity, even although it should be at the same time administered internally for the acute topical affections, example, inflammations of individual parts, erysipelas, etc., which have not been caused by external injury of proportionate violence, but by dynamic or internal causes. yield most surely to the internal remedies homeopathically adapted to the perceptible state of health present in the exterior or interior, selected from the general store of the proved medicines, and generally without any other aid. But if these diseases do not yield to them completely, and if there still remains the affected spot, and in the whole state, notwithstanding good regimen, a relic of disease, which the vital force is not competent to restore to the normal state, then the acute disease was, as not infrequently happens, is the product of sora, and which had hitherto remained latent in the area, but has now burst forth and is on the point of developing into palpable chronic disease. Now he is explaining the detailed aspect of homeopathic management of local diseases. Again, he describes over there, many times it happens, this local manifestation might come as an acute presentation. So patient was not having anything on his body, and all of a sudden he developed some eczematous patch on his body. He comes to a homeopathic physician. The homeopathic physician, being an homeopath, takes the totality in detail and finds it out a right simillimum for that patient. It is based upon the totality of the symptoms. He will going to give that medicine only internally, not applying that medicine locally or not applying anything locally, and maintaining good regimen. Ask the patient to maintain good regimen, and he gives that medicine. There are two possibilities which can occur. First possibility is that that disease will vanish if it is the right medicine and if it is only acute manifestation. But sometimes it happens, the patient's symptoms disappear, but some remnants will still remain, and which even after good regimen, good diet, everything is followed properly, still it persists. Then Hahnemann says, this is not an acute disease then. This is the product of sora. The sora is in background, and this because of this sora, the remnants are still not disappearing under the action of that medicine. Here you have to take into consideration that this is as a chronic and not as an acute. Here you have to take into consideration all the aspects, how to investigate a fundamental cause, all 7 points. You have to choose a remedy which covers the whole broad concept or broad spectrum of that miasm, that is the sora. And then you have to choose a remedy which will cure him perfectly, or it will make a complete cure. So he is explaining all the possibilities of local homeopathic management of local diseases. So one he has mentioned over here, even though it look acute disease on the appearance, it might be acute or it might not be acute. If it is acute, it will disappear. But if it is not acute, then it is definitely a product of sora, and then you have to choose a proper antisoric remedy that he explains in the next aphorism. So is it clear with everyone that 194, that homeopathic management of acute local disease or apparent acute local disease, what he mentioned over there? And now he explains in 195 what he says. In order to effect a radical cure in such cases, which are by no means rare, after the acute state has pretty well subsided, an appropriate antisoric treatment, as is taught in my work on chronic diseases, must then be directed against the symptoms that still remain and the morbid state of health to which the patient was previously subject. In chronic local maladies that are not obviously venereal, the antisoric internal treatment is, moreover, alone requisite. And this is what needed in such types of cases. Many times, such cases which are part and parcel of our daily OPDs, because the modern science doesn't have a permanent solution for such cases. Psoriasis, the lichen planus, the eczemas, the pemphigus, all many skin manifestations. Generally, they are not an acute disease. They're always to be a chronic. And when such cases comes in your OPD, you have to understand the miasmatic background. Yes, Sora is definitely there. What he has mentioned over there is Sora is definitely part and parcel of it. During Hahnemannian time, there were 7-8 cases were of Sora miasm. Present era, it is not Sora. We have mixed miasmatic traits, and that's why we have more cases of psoriasis, more cases of lichen planus, more cases of eczemas, more cases of pemphigus in our OPDs, and they are all mixed miasmatic traits. That's why Hahnemann said in his aphorism that it should be treated with anti-psoricolone. But now, considering the present era, they are not purely psori. They are generally pseudosyphilitic, means tubercular miasm. And present era is more marked of the tubercular miasm. So here you have to take into consideration the miasmatic focus in proper, and accordingly you have to give the anti-miasmatic remedy. Generally, we have many anti-tubercular remedies, and those are generally required in treating such types of chronic skin disorders or chronic peripheral disorders. But most important thing, one has to keep it in your mind that he has to utilize the anti-miasmatic remedy and not only the acute remedy in such types of cases. See, he was very clear with his concept that if it is acute, it will yield to acute remedy. But if it is not acute, it will not yield to acute remedy. There remnants of the disease always remains to be there. Unless and until you treat them properly with miasmatic remedy, it is not possible. And whatever Hahnemann have said is very correct according to his time, that they are the products of Sora. And he has mentioned you have to find it out chronic antisoric remedy. But with present era, you have to find it out proper chronic anti-miasmatic remedy depending upon which miasm the patient presents. So one must clear in mind that if it is chronic local disease, anti-miasmatic remedy is always needed in such types of cases. So is it clear? So that we can go ahead with the 196. What he says in 196. We'll finish this aphorism. It might indeed seem as though the cure of such diseases would be hastened by employing the medicinal substances, which is known to be truly homeopathic to the totality of the symptoms, not only internally, but also externally, because the action of medicine applied to the seat of local affection might effect more rapid change in it. There were some people who used to say that if you use the same remedy which you have chosen on the basis of totality of the symptoms, internally as well as externally, the cure will be hastened. These were the thoughts, and these were the some applications that people have tried in such a manner. But Hahnemann was very perfect with his thought, and he says, no, this should not be. No local treatment of the same medicine should not be given, should be utilized, because the reason he mentions in 197, and that reason is he was very clear about it. This treatment, however, is quite inadmissible. What he says, inadmissible. You should not use the same remedy internally as well as externally. Not only for the local symptoms arising from the miasm of Sora, but also and especially for those originating in the miasm of syphilis or psychosis. For the simultaneous local application, along with the internal employment of the remedy in diseases with chief symptoms is a constant local affection, has this great disadvantage that by such topical application, this chief symptom, local affection, will usually be annihilated sooner than the internal disease, and we shall now be deceived by the semblance of perfect flow. Or at least it will be difficult and in some cases impossible to determine from the premature disappearance of the local symptoms if the general disease is destroyed by the simultaneous employment of the internal medicine. So Hahnemann says that you should not do this. You should not use the same remedy internally and externally. Because if you use it externally, and if it works fast and if it has removed the disease, you don't know whether the internal miasm is cleared or not. Because the symptomatology is the only language with which you can understand the disease is there or not. This is in fact the language of the disease. And if you remove this language, you are nowhere. You don't understand what is happening inside. Hahnemann says if it disappears externally, but internal miasm is not yet treated, then it produces a violent problem inside. It may produce turmoil inside. It may produce or affect the internal organs also. And for that purpose, removing the local symptoms by local means is not at all admissible. This is what Hahnemann says over there. And he was very clear only because he was knowing that unless and until internal miasm is cured, one should not remove the local symptoms. So we have learned about this thought, Hahnemannian thought about this anti-miasmatic treatment, and as well as the antisoric, antipsychotic, antisyphilitic. In this aphorism, he has mentioned about the psychosis and syphilis also, because they are the products of the venereal as well as non-venereal miasms. And unless and until we treat internal miasms, one should not use the local treatment over there. And this fundamental thought should be born with each and every homeopath's mind, what Hahnemann wants to explain. So today we'll stop over here, and tomorrow we'll continue with the same, where we can learn much more about this local treatment, where it is advisable and where it is not admissible. All those things he wants to explain over there. So that's all for today's session. If there are any queries, we can have those, and otherwise we will stop over here. Any question? So I think no more questions. Once again, a very happy Gudi Padwa to all of you, and we'll meet tomorrow at the same time with a new session, and we'll finish this homeopathic management of local disease. Thank you very much.